Well, for this month's e-magazine, I'm doing things a little bit different. Not actually fishing a match, but showing you how I go about preparing for a big event. It's the European Championships. I leave this time next week. So as you can imagine, it's quite a busy time. And like I've always stressed, it's almost more important to prepare and be ready than actually to go fishing. I could have easily have fished a match today, but preparation for me is definitely key. And adopting a professional attitude towards preparation can get you ahead of the competitors before you even wet a line. And I have definitely reaped the benefits in the past of being more prepared and just on the ball, making sure that I haven't forgotten everything, right down from the rods to the reels to the poles to spare elastics, hooks, line, everything. Today we'll be running through everything that I'll be taking with me and making sure that I've got spares of everything and the sort of volumes and the odd little pieces that you do need if you ever do get to fish abroad. The event I'm preparing for is only a couple of weeks away, and as you can see I've already prepared quite a number of rigs. I've also received some different floats from a friend of mine in Hungary, which I will be preparing quite a lot of in the forthcoming days, just so that I'm prepared. I just want to spend a little bit of time when talking about float selection for a venue that you might not have fished before. We're fishing on the Pomerol Canal in Belgium, and I have fished it once before, but that was quite a few years ago, around 10 years ago, and the fishing was quite good, roach and skimmers. But what I tend to do, not just with floats but with all other tackle, is I try to relate to venues that I've fished in England, ones with roaching, ones with breaming, something quite a similar depth, and I'll be preparing the floats and the tackle that I know work for those kind of fish on those venues. For instance, the Pomerol Canal will be bloodworm fishing on the long pole for some roach, some skimmers and maybe some bream. And my two favourite floats for that style of fishing is number one is the John Francois. You can see I've got a variety from 0.4 all the way up to a gram, and I've got some from a gram all the way up to 3 grams already prepared in my other trays here. It's a fantastic float. It's got a nice long wire stem which makes it very stable. On these big canals you can get a lot of drift, a lot of wash, not just from the boats but from any kind of wind, the tow. We know what it's like on lakes in England, and these big canals, believe me, are a lot worse. So a nice long metal stem can get you a lot of stability, which is what obviously you're after. It's got quite a thin fibre top, which again for delicate fishing like bloodworm fishing, probably only be fishing 07, 08, maybe 09 hook lengths if you're lucky enough to catch a few bream. 16, 18, 20 hooks or something nice and fine. The reason I've chosen this float to be my number one is because I know in England that for that style of fishing it works, and it's no different when you're preparing to go to Whiteacres or preparing to go to Stafford Moor or wherever your destination is. If you've got a carp venue near your house and you've got favourite floats, favourite elastics, favourite hooks, favourite hook lengths, go with that in mind, that works for these style of fish. Yes, you might have to adapt your feeding to suit the venue, but 99% of the time the gear that you've selected will be bang on. If it's right on your local venue and you're going to another venue a long way away that's got the same fish, the same depth, using the same baits, your tackle will be dead right again. The other float that I'm preparing, again very similar. This is a Perfect Gloucester, one of my favourite floats again. Again, a very similar shaped body, slightly more bulbous, a slightly thicker wire stem, again for stability. It's a float that I've used a lot on deep canals for bream fishing, for skimmer fishing, and you'll notice the only real difference in the floats is the thickness of the top. Obviously the Perfect Gloucester has got a much thicker fibre top. This lends itself to putting a bit of line on the bottom, bigger baits, sitting and waiting, holding it dead still in the tow. And again, it's a float I've used a lot on the Gloucester Canal. I've used it a few times. I've used it earlier this year in Hungary and came fourth in a big event. What you can probably see from the way I'm talking about the floats is they're floats that I've got confidence in. They're floats that I've used a lot, and because of that I'm prepared to use them on different venues that I've not actually fished before, but I know that these floats are bang on for roach, skimmers and bream. That's my number one choice, or my two choices for this style of fishing. And I wouldn't like to say how long I've spent preparing just for the event next week in Belgium, but it is a long time. When you're out there and you're in the heat of the competition, the last thing you want to be doing is worrying about the rigs. If I get a box of floats with 10 in, which is what I like to do with the floats that I've chosen to use, you don't want to go out and buy hundreds and hundreds of floats, all different sizes, all different shapes, all different makes. Get some floats that you're confident with, that you know work, and that you know work for those type of fish in those certain conditions on those venues. If you can get 8 or 10 of each size, prepare 4 or 5 and keep a few spare in case of any breakages, in case you do need to up the main line or down the main line, change the shot, and you've already got some different floats that you can prepare in the evening and ready for the next day. I've received some floats, you can see just a few of them there. These are the ones that arrived a day ago, and I will be starting to prepare these this afternoon and this evening. I'm spending a lot of time getting them absolutely bang on and dead right. The feeling that you get inside when you're prepared, when everything's ready, 1 or 2 days before you actually leave to fish your festival, or like I'm doing at big championships, the feeling, it just settles you down. You're not nervous, you're not worried about anything, and knowing that you're prepared really does give you a peace of mind. 90% of what we're going out there to do will be to do with the feeding. The floats, try to stick with what you know, try to stick with what you've got confidence in, and prepare these floats comparing the venue you're going to venues you know. And that's one of the best tips I can give anybody when you're actually preparing your rigs to go and fish a festival or a venue that you've not actually tackled before. The next thing I want to talk to you about as far as preparing the rig is concerned is the way I actually go about shotting the float up. Now obviously you've got a bulk and however many droppers you want, but again, going back to what I know and what I know works for these type of fish, I'm going to be fishing with a bulk. I know at 13 metres, there is a 13 metre limit in international fishing, so at 13 metres I know it's 9 foot deep, the venue. So I can relate to the venues that I fished in England. I'm going to have my bulk 30 centimetres up from the loop, and then I've got various different size hook lengths depending on how much line we're putting on the bottom. I'm going to be fishing with 2 droppers. The difference is in mainland Europe you are actually allowed to use bigger lead shot than you are in England, and it is something that I do like to do. It's much denser, hence it's much smaller, and it makes the rig much more in proportion. You don't have massive shot. Obviously you can use Olivettes, but again they tend to spin, and a nice block of shot when I'm fishing abroad is definitely my #1 choice. In my tackle room I've got a nice shotting tube which is about 3 foot deep, so I can prepare the rig exactly. So I've got a bulk, again I've got a ruler so I can measure that the bulk is exactly 30 centimetres off and then put the shot on. The 2 droppers, which again on the 0.4, 0.6s are number 10s, the 0.8s and a gram are number 9s, and then above that are number 8s. Again, it's positive style fishing. You're fishing for decent sized fish, probably with a little bit of line on the bottom as the floats get a bit bigger. This is a 1.5 gram Gloucester, which is a typical float that I will be making up in the next few days, like I say, for this event. And one little trick, when you've put the bulk on and the 2 droppers, I shot it so it's absolutely full bristle, and maybe a tiny bit of the body sticking out, and then I use the half styles again just to bring it down, number 12 being the best size, and that can take 5 or 6 half styles just to fine tune the bristle and bring it down, and then the float's perfectly shotted with about 2 mil sticking out. Now obviously what this enables me to do is when I'm on the bank and fishing is to fine tune my float very easily. I'm not taking a shot off, putting a smaller shot on. I can just nick one of these tiny styles off with my nail and go back out, and the float will just be lifted up a little bit. If it's windy or there's a strong tow or I end up putting a lot of line on the bottom, you do need a little bit more float showing, and using the half styles enables me to do this. So like I say, shot the float full bristle, maybe with 1/2 mil of the body sticking out, and then with the half styles just bring it down slowly until you've got about 2 mil of the tip sticking out of the water. Then I just literally wind it onto the winder, 20 to 25 turns, which I know is well over a top 4, so that's plenty deep enough for the venue that I'm going on. I do use lead shot when I'm fishing in mainland Europe. Obviously in England it's illegal, so it's back to Olivettes and that. So any rigs that I make up for fishing in mainland Europe are just kept in my tackle room and used when I do fish these venues abroad when it is allowed. So that's how I actually prepare the rig. It's quite time consuming, but like I've always touched on, that sense of being prepared, being ready, peace of mind, when you've got a box full of rigs and everything, you can then go out there or to wherever it is you're fishing, whether it's Whiteacres or Stafford Moor or anywhere you end up fishing a festival. Peace of mind, you can go there and you can concentrate on the more important things like the feeding and talking to people about how they fed it, what to feed, where to feed it. And this is as important as your rigs, but if you've got your rigs already prepared, it's one less thing to worry about. Well, as you may know, World and European Fishing Championships, there is no feeder fishing. So obviously next week I'm faced with a dilemma. The pegs are going to be quite close, it's only a 13-metre pole limit and you do need to get out. And that's when the slider comes into its own. This can be fished at a distance, anything up to 60 yards you can fish this to. And it really is a very, very effective method on these venues that are deep and the fish are definitely at distance. Like I say, the sliding float, it can be quite a technical way of fishing. I've got 4 rods made up, all identical. This is in case of a breakage, in case I want to set some at different depths. But depending on the depth that you actually want to fish in or the distance, obviously that's something that we have to find out there. But getting the rod set up basically and shotted is a necessity. So I've got them all in a made up rod bag, you can see here. Normally I use the Dava one, but because we're on England duty, everything's Drennan. Drennan have got some nice bags there now that you can actually put the rod in made up. Again, it's peace of mind and knowing that you're prepared. Again, with the shotting of the float, very, very similar to the pole floats. Shotted up in a tube in my tackle room, again, to get it absolutely bang on. You'll notice I've got an 8-gram Drennan Olivet here with 2 shot above it, 3 below it, and that'll hang nicely against the float when cast. There's a bead here so that I can have a nice big hole in the float to let the line slide very freely, and a small bead that's going to stop against the stop knot. Like I say, it's a very technical way of fishing, but again, it's of utmost importance to be prepared. And again, as with all my rigs, I've then got a metre of line coming down to a swivel, again measured exactly to a foot hook length. Again, I've just put any hook length on because until I actually get out there and fish, I'm not too sure what hooks and hook lengths are going to be best for the actual fish that we're fishing for. I do know the rod, I do know the reel, the line, the floats and the shotting pattern is perfect for these kind of fish. So going back to what I said with the pole rigs, if you're going to a festival or a venue that you've not fished before and you want to prepare, base it around what you know. Base it around what you've got confidence in and what you know works on a similar venue. And trust me, you won't be far off. So like I say, this rod's all ready. Again, I don't know the distance that we're going to be fishing or the depth of water, but the rod's all ready, the float's shotted perfectly. It's a case of now folding it up, putting it in the ready-made rod bag, and away you go. Again, peace of mind. I've got 4 rods. I've got 2 already made up that I did the night before last, and 2 that I'm going to prepare in the next day or 2. Again, preparation is definitely key. Slider fishing is quite technical, and maybe one day we'll get out and have a session on this for all you people that do want to know exactly how it's done and exactly how it's fished, the casting technique, the plumbing up and so on. I could really sit here for a day and talk about that, but today's about preparation, and I wanted to run you through the slider setup quite quickly and just to show you exactly what I do, and the fact that I've got 4 rods. Any breakages or tangles, the rod can be put down quickly and another one cast out and we can be fishing straight away. As far as the rods are concerned, all the rods I'm taking with me are tournament 13-foot rods. Again, the action, not just for casting but for playing fish like roach and skimmers and bream, is second to none. It's nice and soft. I've used it on a wide variety of venues, not just in this country but abroad, and again I've got confidence in it. I trust the rod to be perfect for what I'm going to be doing out there. And just one little twist, something that I've not done before, but I have had a few casts with it and I'm sure it will make a difference. For the readers that know, I'm a lover now of fluorocarbon, especially on straight lead fishing and feeder fishing. I think it makes a massive difference. Not only is it invisible, but it's very heavy. It just really does tend to spook the fish a lot less. And what I've got here, I've got 5 pound line coming straight down here. Now in the middle of the swivel there's a knot which joins fluorocarbon to the main line, and again this comes down, it's hanging all the way down, a metre of line to the swivel. And my thinking behind this is quite simple. I know some of my friends, Callum and Simon Willsmore, have been out to the venue and they've told me that it's very, very clear. And I'm just thinking along the lines of fluorocarbon, it's virtually invisible in water, it's not going to spook the fish. So from the bulk down to the hook, if I can have that effect that's not going to spook fish, hopefully I'll end up catching more. But I will let you know in future emags how that worked. And like I say, maybe if we do get out one day and have a slider session, either on a deep canal or a big lake, I can run you through the whole tactics and the feeding behind the slider. Obviously when we're talking about big floats and travelling, you do need something nice and sturdy to keep them in. You can get these boxes, they're available in a lot of tackle shops. You don't want to go and spend a lot of money on some decent sized floats and well made floats just to get them damaged in transport. So a nice hard box, something that's really going to protect them, it really is a must. What you'll also notice I've got is a large box of sight tips. Again, different lengths, different diameters, different colours to suit any kind of eventuality as far as needing to see the float, different kind of bites. The float will stay exactly the same, but the tips might change a little bit. If I'm fishing for very small fish at a distance, then obviously a very thin tip can be very good just to see the bites. Likewise, if I was fishing for bream with a foot or two of line on the bottom, a nice thick top. And the beauty is with the perfect range of sliders is that these tips all interchange with every single float. You can just clip on any top you want. And at the drop of a hat you can go from a very thick tip float to, like I say, a very thin tip float. And this is what makes the range of floats very good in my opinion. Yes, I've got plenty, but like I say, when you go to these foreign countries, the last thing you want to do is to be running out of gear and not being able to get it. Well, when you go away fishing, obviously you've got to think about preparing some hook lengths before you go. I've already started to top my favourites up for this style of fishing: the black nickels, the green gammas, the ultra fine pole hooks, and the B590s, which again for this kind of fishing are all my favourites. It's a bit like hooks, ground bait are things that you need to keep open and be willing to change. Things like your rods, your reels, your floats, your shotting patterns, they're things that are almost cast in stone for me. That's how I'm going to use it. But I will obviously be open to changing my hooks, my hook lengths, things like this to suit the actual venue. If I'm fishing for a bigger bream, obviously a thicker wire hook, something like the B560 could be very good. Likewise, if it starts to go a little bit more difficult, the Willenbrook, which is a pattern from Sensus. Again, having a nice big tub of hooks with me doesn't mean I have to use them all, but what it does mean is that I've got them for any eventuality. Yes, 90% of the time I will end up using my old favourites, the hooks that I just mentioned, the green gammas, the ultra fines, the black nickels or the 6110s. They're my favourites for this style of fishing. There's very few things in fishing that I leave open to thinking, well, I'm going to have a fish and then I'll make my mind up. But the hook choice and hook length line is definitely one of them. As far as the hook length line, I'll be using Drennan double strength in the lighter lines, and then the Daiwa match winner in the heavier lines. These are my two favourite lines. The knot formation is fantastic. Again, I'm not going to trial different lines when the heat's on and I really need to do well. I'm going to use the tackle that I know I can depend on. I've got an array of hook boxes here, all with different measurements, different lengths that I've used at different venues. I will take another new hook box with me so that if I do have a different length or a different hook, they can be tied up and put in a box all on their own. 90% of the time I will stick to the hooks that I know and the hooks that I trust. Well, I'm now going to talk about the bait side of things. Not just the bait you need, but the actual utensils you need to introduce the bait into your swim. Going on to actual bait, where we're travelling abroad, we're going to be taking some with us, so a nice cool box with plenty of ice packs. Again, if you're travelling a long way in England to fish a festival, again, Pick your bait up from the tackle shop. If you can't get it on site, pick it up from the tackle shop, take it with you, and always make sure that you take plenty of what you think you're going to need, because believe me, there's nothing worse than getting a method sorted, getting a venue sorted, and not having the bait to attack it the way that you want. I always take much more than I need, almost rather be throwing it away than not having it with me. We're travelling to Belgium. There is a tackle shop very close where we can get our bloodworm and joker, our ground bait, and they do hook baits, as in maggots, casters and worms. We're actually taking a volume of casters, red and white maggots, pinkies and dendrobinas with us. Again, being English anglers, we know the advantage of introducing these particle baits as far as bream are concerned, and roach and skimmers. So that is something that we'll definitely be trying. As with the floats, as with the rods and everything is what I know I can depend on, rely on, everything that I know that works, but with little twists like your hooks, the hook lengths, and bait is no different. Obviously we're taking a variety of different ground baits with us and leams, and this will be the reason that we're going to practice for 2 weeks, so we can try and eliminate certain things and come up with the best mix. Not only the best mix, but the right amount of bait to have in it. I'm now going to go on to some of the utensils as far as preparing the bait, mixing the bait and introducing it into your peg. Starting with the drill. Now again, as you can see, this is a very big, powerful Ryobi drill. I've used a lot of other drills in my time and they haven't really got the oomph, and I invested in a real proper big drill, one that the battery lasts a long time. Again, when you're fishing every day, you're going back to your room or back to your hotel, wherever it is you're staying, and you want to tie a few hooks, redo a couple of rigs, put your feet up, talk to your roommate about what's actually happening. Just have a little bit of time away just thinking about what's happening instead of actually doing it. Again, the last thing you want to be doing every night is charging your drill up. The battery life will last 2 to 3 days, so every second or third day I have to charge the battery up. So that's the drill. Again, a nice big whisk. One thing with the drills, please be careful. They really are quite dangerous. When you've got the whisk in the drill, make sure that you never put your hands anywhere near, because as you can see, if you've got a powerful drill turning a whisk that sort of size, you could obviously do some damage. So please be very careful. And if you have any youngsters fishing around you, don't let them use it. Always prepare their bait for them. Make sure the drill is turned off. Make sure the whisk is taken out before you start to clean the whisk. I've seen some people when the drill's running and they're cleaning the whisk, and it really is dicing with death. Obviously something like that could do a lot of damage. So again, just please be very careful when you're using the drill with the whisk. I've got a little cool bag there, just with a couple of pole cups, a smaller cup, and obviously my chop worm scissors. Chop worm is something that is very much in my armoury when I do go abroad. These big bream and that in these foreign waters seem to really love it. As you can see there, I've got a single blade. That's for cutting up the worms quite large. Then obviously a treble blade. This is if I need them just a little bit smaller, a little bit stiff there where I've been using them a bit lately. And then obviously one thing that I do use that a lot of people don't, from the cooking shop, you probably saw me using these in Stafford Moor, is herb scissors. These are when you really want to dice the worms really fine. The pole cups, obviously these are for delivering bait into your peg, but not only that, when you're fishing as a team and you want to have accurate measurements, 250mm, I've got some smaller cups in here. I can measure exactly how much bloodworm, joker, casters, maggots, worms I've actually put into the ground bait, and then go from there. Obviously if you know exactly how much bait you've introduced, then you can draw some conclusion as to why and what you've actually caught. As far as actually mixing the bait's concerned, I've got some big buckets here. Obviously domestically I'm with Old Ghost, the ground bait company. When we fish for England, it's obviously census. So I've got some nice bowls here to prepare my leams in, to prepare my ground baits in. Bigger buckets, as you can see here, to prepare the main mixes in. Again, I've got plenty of them. Again, I want to have more than enough. One full of water, 2 or 3 to do your mixes in. You can wash your hands in the water, then carry on preparing your tackle. Bait boxes, again, I've got a variety of different bait boxes. If you go into a hot country, or indeed somewhere like Cornwall, somewhere in this country can get very hot, the lighter coloured bait boxes can keep your bait much fresher and cooler. White, or these new Drennan ones that are a nice light blue, can keep it a lot cooler. Especially things like worms, bloodworm, maggots, things that are going to suffer if they do get too hot. So like I say, I've got some normal black coloured bait boxes or the Drennan blue ones, but these ones, if it's hot, are definitely worth investing in, because like I say, if your bait suffers, your catch rate's going to suffer, and ultimately that can make a massive difference. Again, as far as introducing bait into your swim, catapults. In Belgium we're going to be firing ground bait out a long way, probably 20, 30, 40 metres, maybe even further. My number one choice are the Drennan ground bait catapults. You can see there that they've got the soft ground bait and then the power ground bait. This one really is for firing it a long way. But if you're fishing with a volume of lean, obviously your ground bait's going to be very heavy, and you need a very powerful catapult just to get your ground bait out to say 40 metres. Again, if you're fishing on the commercial scene, you'll see here there's a lot of different catapults, loose feed catapults, different ones, some of which I've checked the rubber, but in the next few days I will be going through them all, checking the rubber, making sure that they're right. I don't think loose feed will play a part where I'm going, but for you, if you're preparing for a festival, always make sure your catapults are up to scratch. Really, it's about just servicing the whole of your gear, making sure that everything, nothing's left to chance, everything's fine, so that come the day, if all of a sudden you need to start feeding shallow, pick your catapult up, it's not going to break. If it does happen to break towards the end of a session, you've got another one. It really is about being prepared. That's everything that I need to not only prepare the bait, mix the bait, but obviously deposit it into the swim. Now, just going back to what I said about transporting the bait, I did mention it, but try and invest in a nice cool box. Ones that you'd use for food, you can buy them from most hardware stores. Ones with a nice sealable lid, and always put plenty of ice. The bait can't be too cold. It needs to be very cold when in transport. You don't want it to get warm or hot in any way at all. The most important thing is what you're putting on your hook, your bait presentation, and if your bait's not that good, your catch rate will definitely suffer. I now want to talk to you about the rods and the poles that I'll be taking with me and the spare sections. Obviously when we fish for England, everything's Drennan, so I have to change from my Daiwa stuff over to my Drennan stuff. So the Daiwa stuff will be left at home. I've taken all the poles and tops and bits and pieces that I need out of that. In this carry-all here I will be taking is a selection of whips from 2 metres, well from 1.5 metres right up to 6 metres. There's some longer ones in there. We don't really think that whip fishing is going to play a part, but you never know. Even if you're messing around in the edge for a little tiny fish, it's handy to have it with you. It's a long way to come home. We've got a big van to travel in. Anything that I think we possibly might need is going to come with me, because I don't want to be out there under the limelight in a big competition like that and not have the gear I need with me. Moving on, I've got the 2 Drennan made up rod bags that I'll be taking with me. Like I showed you earlier, I've got 2 rods already made up. When I've made the other 2 up, they'll all be put in there together. Again, nice and organised. They'll take up to 4 rods each, so if I do have any more duplicates made up while I'm out there, it's a case of just popping them in. There's plenty of room. The rod bag, again, in the outside pocket, I've got my umbrella, my bait umbrella, a few bits and pieces. In the actual holdall, I've got my 3 poles, 1 that I use and 2 spares. Again, we're only in Belgium, but when we do travel further afield, obviously if I break a part of my pole, either playing a fish or step on it, which has happened, obviously it's a long way to try and get a spare section. So always try to take at least 3 or 4 spares with me. There's a number of top 4s and 5s. I know the venue quite well where we're going. It's only 9 foot deep, so there's not a necessity for a big number of number 5s, but again, I'll take them with me in case of any breakages. I've got a tube with a number of carp tops, just in case some bigger bream or even some carp do show. I've been told that they have stocked a few carp, so again, you never know. Another tube full of my match kits with number 2 to number 6 elastic in, all ready to go. Again, the elastics, once we fish for a few days, seen the size of the fish, seen if the fish fight hard or don't, then the elastics will be fine-tuned along with the hooks, along with the hook length and the ground bait. Most of the actual tackle, the terminal tackle, the rods, the reels, the floats, the shotting patterns will all stay the same. Just a little bit of a twist. Again, we're fishing a very big canal. The rods I showed you earlier, 13 foot, they're quite powerful. If it does turn into a distance job, I want to make sure I've got the tools with me to do it. The 14 foot Tournament Arity is definitely this tool. With the same reel, £5 line, you can cast a 14 or a 16 gram slider miles, and you can really fish a long way. So again, it's important for me to have the right tools for the right job, just in case this starts to happen. And if it's going to be hot out there and the pegs are close, the fish could back off even further. That's when these will come into play. Again, I'm not just taking one, I've got three, because if it does come into play, I'm going to need to have a duplicate and a spare, just in case of any breakages. I've got a 13-foot rod there. Again, this is one that I haven't made up yet, exactly the same as the two that I've showed you. I'm waiting for another one from Daiwa, so I've got four exactly the same. Again, it may seem extravagant, but when you're fishing at the top of the tree, you really need to leave no room for error. Again, I've got another holdall here with a couple of 13-foot Spectrons in. Again, they're a nice soft rod. These I'm going to use just in case they're very, very small fish on a slider, 2, 3, 4 ounce fish, but I don't think so. They're slightly softer and allow me to strike at the same sort of hardness, but again, have the tip to absorb it. They're slightly softer than the Tournament. Not my preferred rod, but again, it is a bit horses for courses, and I'm making sure that I'm taking everything. As far as the elastic in the pole tops are concerned, again, I'll wait till I fish. Wait until you go to some venues, you can catch the same size fish, but they'll fight slightly harder if the water's clearer, or vice versa, they can obviously fight slightly less. So elastic choices will be made after 2 or 3 practice sessions. Again, this is why we're going for quite a number of days. It's what we always do, try and find out the ground bait mixes, the elastic, the right hooks, how far to fish over depth, and then just fine tune things from there, and hopefully come back with a medal. They're the rods and the poles that I'm taking. It looks a lot, it is a lot, but like I say, I don't want to get to some faraway land and know that I've got the right tool for the job at home. I want to get to some faraway land, need the right tool for the job, and I've got one in my bag, or 2 or 3. It really is a necessity, and not only if you're going to fish abroad, but if you're obviously fishing any festivals in this country, preparation is key, and having a number of different spares just in case of any breakages, so you can have a duplicate. You can just put one down that's broke, pick another one up and carry on. This is match fishing, and it's normally the people that are really efficient and who are prepared that have just got that little bit of an edge. I'm now going to talk to you about the bait bag and the net bag and the accessories that I'm going to take. Obviously we've touched a bit on the buckets, the mixing and the variety of baits and leams that we could end up using. So a couple of nice big side trays that clip straight onto the reef box that we use when sponsored by the England team. Obviously a nice stink bag when the nets are wet. Last thing you want to do first thing in the morning is to get in the van. It absolutely stinks, especially when you're catching silverfish, roach and bream. They're quite slimy, and that can end up with being quite a smelly situation. Then I've got a cool bag here with all my bits and pieces in, things like the balling arms, again spare legs, brackets, the connectors for the front rest, again another small tray here, a Drennan bait weighter which I wouldn't be without, again bait boxes just sit straight in, new design, goes straight in, absolutely perfect, everything's to hand. It's a setup I use all the time anyway. When I'm fishing domestically, obviously being with Daiwa, it's exactly the same setup I've got with my England box. I tend not to change things around too much. I know where everything is, I like where everything is, and things work in total harmony, and that's the way that I want it. Obviously then I've got the front rest. Again, in a lot of countries when you're fishing long poles, you're trying to hold your float still. This is definitely a must. Goes into 2 brackets on the front legs. You can hold the pole dead still. You've got a few grooves here for windy conditions. Again, fantastic bit of kit. Kinder pots, again, doesn't really play a part. Obviously in UK match fishing it does. In World Championships it's yet to play a part. You are allowed to use them, but I'm sure one day it will, and again, I want to have them with me. As far as the nets are concerned, in SIPS rules, 3.5 metre nets. It used to be 4 metre to 3.5 now. Again, I probably will take a spare. We're on a concrete bank, so again, it can get worn, especially in windy and towing conditions. The landing nets, abroad you are allowed to use knotted mesh nets, but the new Drennan nets, again, fantastic. Slightly larger one just in case the bream are quite big, but the small one is definitely my #1 choice. Perfect not only for silverfish, but obviously those bigger bream as well. Going on, we've touched on the catapults. Again, nice bag, zipped up, can be put straight into the net bag. Everything's nice and organised. Like I say, I've got some mixing bowls. I've got the bag that I showed you earlier, scissors, pole cups, bait boxes all at the ready. The new coloured bait boxes again to keep everything cool. There's a lot of gear, but it's nice and organised, and it's a necessity to have everything. Even if you don't use it, it's best to have it. Obviously, when I'm on international duty, I can't use my Daiwa box, and the Drennan Team England team is sponsored by Reeve, and as you can see, I've got a Drennan coloured Reeve here. There's not masses of gear actually in the box. In the front drawer, I've got a selection of plummets, my tuning styles, pair of pliers, just various bits and pieces, along with disgorgers, knot pickers, just general bits and pieces. In the side drawer, there's some spare shot, some spare line. But again, it's only the real necessities. Everything else is done in the tackle room or in the hotel, either before or in the afternoon, evening, when we arrive back at the room. When I'm actually on the bank, I just want to be concentrating on the real important things. Don't want to be making up rigs or adjusting my shot, and I want that to be all absolutely bang on. The Reeve is very good. Need different attachments obviously to my Daiwa box, so as you can imagine, there's a lot of gear to sort out on that front. But the setup is very much the same. A large tray on my left, a Drennan bait waiter, then obviously my pole roost on my right with my crook, with balling in arms, which again is a necessity really for international style fishing. I just want to give you a little insight into the Drennan England team. As far as the travelling arrangements and that are concerned, we discuss it amongst ourselves, discuss when we want to go, how long we want to go for, if we can fish off the match length or not. This time we're going on the Tuesday, so that'll give us a few days, 4 or 5 days practicing, just to find the lay of the land, know where the tackle shop is, know where the match length is. You know, even in the hot countries, try to acclimatise to the weather can be very important. The management take care of the travel bookings and obviously the hotel bookings, so it's something that as anglers we don't have to worry about. It's something that's not sort of getting in our way. We can concentrate utmost on the fishing. As far as the venue's concerned, up until this week it's been very difficult, but credit where credit's due, it is a very good venue when I've fished it before, and to be honest, it's a very difficult time of year to judge a venue with the fish spawning, the weather changing, heavy downpours, thunderstorms. The fish don't really know where they are, so it's very unfair to judge a venue. However, earlier this week, a couple of Dutch lads I know did catch 20 kilos each of decent sized bream on the slider, and they actually got broke a couple of times, which could have been those carp that I told you that they'd actually put in. So all in all, I think we should be getting some bites. It could be very difficult technical fishing. So there we go, I've given you a good insight to the preparation I make, and hopefully you can employ the same preparation for your fishing and stand you in good stead. Hopefully I can put it to good use and come back with a medal.